Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the judging stream of Cultivation Jam. I am your jam host, Shibanya, and I've got our judges here today to judge all of your games. Why don't y'all introduce yourselves?
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Casey Lucas, and as you can tell, I currently am getting over a cold, so pardon me sounding like a 50-year-old smoker. I've worked on titles such as Mini Metro, Mini Motorways, and most recently Darkest Dungeon 2, and this is my first time judging the Dog Pit Jam.
Hi, this is Approaching Infinity. I also go by Geometric. I'm a game dev and a returning judge for this jam.
I'm Colin. I'm a recently solo indie dev and worked on such titles as Darkest Dungeon 1 and 2, and happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Dieting Hippo. I do game dev things, and I made a Doom map of a bathroom that a lot of people liked.
Hello, I'm Hempuli. I'm also a game developer known for games such as Baba Is You and also Baba Is You.
Awesome. So we are here to judge your games, and most of the categories of this jam are judged, but there is one category where it is power to the people, community choice, and we totally know who they are. The name of the game, which is just when community choice is displayed on your screen. So everybody give a hearty congratulations to the winner of community choice. Good
Hey,
job.
congratulations.
I was
Yeah,
believing you.
baby.
Congratulations,
job.
name of game.
Thank you for all the bribes. Much appreciated.
Congratulations, hashtag developer here.
And when it was obvious choice. Excellent. Yes. So very nice, very nicely done to the winner of community choice. The rest of this stream is now concerned with the judged categories. So we're going to start today with best gameplay. And there were a lot of really, really strong contenders in this category. Anybody want to start tossing out nominees? Start debating? I know I've got a few.
I've really enjoyed Fortnite. I think I would like to nominate Fortnite.
I haven't heard of that game.
I had a lot of fun with a lot of these, but one of the first games that comes to mind is Shroom 64, which
I was thinking
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, that one.
I've
really-
never had more fun hitting stuff with a newspaper in a game before.
that was fun for embodying a like a first-person shooter style presentation, but doing all the actions that you do to start like growing shroom spores.
Mhm.
And then consuming them.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to nominate Cultivar or Cultivar, which is I don't know if everybody played it, but it's a kind of a card game, almost tabletop-y, right? Like
It's sort of a deck-esque game.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot too.
Yeah.
It was kind of like almost a turn-based strategy thing, with the goal to just have the most valuable field
Yeah,
while
for
avoiding
me-
like things that would reduce the value, like having weeds that grew.
Every, I don't know, it's like you have 50 days or 45 days or something, and every day you have a choice of a few actions. And then on your garden or whatever, each tile has a mix of fertilizer,
Agricola.
water, or light. And yeah, and then it's just like plant a seed and try and match all those environmental variables to it. So I thought it was
And
really,
then some of the plants would have effects on the tiles around them.
yeah.
I really
And then sometimes you'd have like the junk objects that you could still grow like ivy on or whatever.
Yeah, they had like specialized plants that could grow on them.
And it was nice, and like it was relatively easy to play. It had a lot of nice, like the tooltip thing. Like when you moused over a spot, you could see kind of really quickly at a glance, like, oh yeah, this thing still needs water, this thing needs sun, and then each tile has the little icons. So it's like I never really found myself having any trouble playing it. Like
Yeah, I was gonna say it was very well tutorialized. Like
Yeah.
it's the those sort of like combo deck and tile games are not my typical faves. Like it's not normally like if I just had a choice of like 50 games, that probably wouldn't be the one that I would pick up. So it's not something I have a ton of experience with, but I never felt lost, but at the same time I also didn't feel condescended to. And so that's kind of a sign of just a really well executed concept, I think, is
I
that
think it was
I
really
never
well
felt like I was grasping in the dark, but I also didn't feel like the game thought I was babby.
It was good. I want to mention Seeds of Revolution.
I love that one.
That game surprised me because I'm bad at Pac-Man, and so
It's hard, dude. It's really hard.
yeah.
As soon as I saw that like the fist mechanic was actually limited, I was like, oh great, like there's no way I can play this. But what I really appreciated about it was that it wasn't just straight up Pac-Man. Like there was some interesting complexity in the AI.
Hmm.
It was almost like Pac-Man with like a stealth element.
Yeah, there's some depth going on there that I really appreciated.
Yeah, you had to almost like divert them on the one side and a dart on the other one to get past them and all that, and tactically use your punches to get rid of the pesticides and all.
Tactical plant punching.
Yeah.
You know, it's always kind of
As you do.
dangerous
Yeah.
when you make a game that invites comparison with another game, because it's like, if you're going to invite comparison with a famous game, you better do it better than them. But I think it does well in the comparison to Pac-Man because it does enough differently and in a unique way that the comparison actually just helps to grasp like the basic mechanics a bit better. So I liked it as a variation on the Pac-Man-esque, I suppose.
I do want to call out Ascension as well for being having a very solid feel to it, and I liked a lot the feedback. Like one, destroying the furniture is really satisfying, but also like the little bits of feedback, like when you put the bits on the fire and it gets bigger, and like you start getting a little bit more light. It all like worked really well. It was really nice.
Yeah, I went back and I
A really well done double jump too.
Yeah, I finally figured out the double jump, and then I was like, okay, now I get it, and now this is really cool. I really like it. And I have to agree, I also like how the game, it doesn't tutorialize, but just by like flailing around, I was able to figure like, oh, I need to do this, I need to bring this here. And I thought that was an interesting goal of like, you break the things, you bring the things back to the fire, so it wasn't just like, go from start to finish in a platformer or something like that.
Yeah, like it wasn't super intuitive my first time playing it, but it was interesting enough that like, even though I died basically immediately, I was like keen to just go right back in for another go, And like honestly, even like the feedback and the little animation that you get when you die was super well done. So I was like, oh, well, that was cool, instead of like raging out.
I do also want to say about the gameplay, like I love that as you're going through a level, it adds extra fires for you to drop off stuff at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked how dying wasn't too punitive. Because
there was one level where I kept stupidly dying like all the way at the top, and I would get sent back to the bottom, and all my furniture bits were at the top.
Oh no!
Oh,
well,
that was only one level that gave me trouble.
That's too bad.
And also highlight, I think it's called Refuse.
I was just about to mention that one.
Yeah, love that one.
That was fun. It was especially fun being with a group and all of us like drawing on our washing machines together.
Nice.
Yeah,
I only read the rules and kind of went through it myself, right? But I could imagine it kind of makes a beautiful. I did. I must say I kind of cheaped out, but I was really taken by the sort of journey your household item goes through, and I felt it was spot on the theme for the jam.
Yeah, I feel in general that this jam had multiple tabletop games that had very interesting approaches to the tabletop elements. It's kind of difficult to say which parts should count for gameplay and which parts count for, I don't know, like storytelling or something like that.
It's hard to compare apples to oranges like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's I definitely agree with Refuse, and also with about I feel that Wide Awake in the Garden had kind of similarly interesting tabletop gameplay.
That's a very fun creative exercise.
Yeah,
Just
that was.
Yeah, those were both a lot of fun.
Use one at a time to solve your problem.
Oh yeah,
definitely unique.
Yeah, Wide Awake.
One thing that I really liked about Refuse in terms of actual gameplay is that I thought that using a pre-drawn character sheet in the washing machine was actually a really neat kind of gameplay hack to get people into that game, even if they might be people who aren't confident in their drawing ability. Because oftentimes with those kind of drawing exercise games, I played a couple of those at the Golden Cobras over the years, is that sometimes if you see that the prompts are really complex, people can be really nervous about playing them if they think that they aren't a good artist or like aren't going to draw something fun or coherent. and like having a pre-built base to draw things on top of was a neat little trick to kind of encourage some creativity from people who might necessarily not be the target audience for drawing games, because they might be feeling nervous or feeling like they kind of can't hang with their more artistically minded bros.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great way to like get people to get out of their nervousness about it.
Yeah, and they really focus on the one hard part, right, which is the household items, because plants, most people can kind of get away with vines, or if it's green, it looks like a plant, and yeah, I think it was well done.
I wanted to shout out Field of Excellence because that game had some surprising depth to its gameplay of like it's simple, like you're just closing off parts of a field, but there's a bit of strategy there.
Yeah.
I definitely got like kind of really into playing. Once it started getting really tough, I was like, oh damn it, like I kept resetting the level, like no, I want to.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about if you make a game based off of another one, you definitely want to at least aim for something more than the original. And the dev mentioned that this is based off of the game Kicks, where you got a little marker that you're filling in fields with, but they also added in the chainsaws and the scythe that add extra obstacles for knocking things down, and that added enough spice to elevate it.
Yeah, it felt very polished too. It's like it felt like a complete package. Right?
Speaking of polished, there's one game that I think we should shout out just because we haven't yet, and it really stood out for me as being a very polished entry, was The Home of Playa, the platformer with that gorgeous color palette. I was really impressed with the sheer amount of content in it compared to how polished it was, because oftentimes with Game Jam games you can usually get like a very polished short thing or an extremely janky long thing, but this felt like a very polished medium length thing, and I was really impressed with it, because normally I find Game Jam platformers, they're usually just kind of a mess in a lot of ways, but this one was super polished, and I didn't encounter any issues with. I think someone had noted that there were some issues with characters getting stuck.
Yeah, that happened to me.
Oh no. Yeah, I didn't encounter that, so I thought it was just brilliant from start to finish.
I loved it because I love the idea of games where you can platform and explore without like getting killed, because I'm bad at video games. So this kind of like scratched that itch of just like hopping around, platforming, chilling.
Yeah,
I appreciated that.
there was a really like chill vibe to it for a platformer, right? Like I found myself kind of being like, I was just super zen collecting the little mana orbs, or I forget what they were, like energy orbs, and
magic or something.
Trying not to squash the mushrooms and all that. Right?
Yeah, and just like vibing out with the snails and letting them like swoosh me around. I loved the snails. And I love how when you die, she's just sort of like, whoops, my bad.
Yeah, such a chill experience. It's great.
For me, The Home of Playa was kind of a game where I definitely enjoyed the graphics, and I enjoyed a lot of the small touches, especially the way when you get close to the snails, they go into their shells and you can still walk on top of them and such. Like, it was a very, very odd and interesting game, but I do have to say that gameplay-wise, it felt extremely janky to me. Like, I did get stuck once. Other than that, I don't think I ran into any kind of game-breaking issues. But the entire game had a very strong sense of things only hanging together barely, and like the jumping and movement was very loose, and you could kind of move in some really odd ways if you just tried. So I feel that I just wanted to kind of contrast what was said earlier about the gameplay feeling very polished, because I feel that the strength of the game was maybe elsewhere than in the gameplay itself, from my point of view.
I'll say
I want to go back and try to break it.
I hit game-breaking bugs multiple times because I went back to play it on my own, not streaming, and like I had to abandon a run because the character got stuck and couldn't move, and I couldn't reset. So that was a bummer. And especially comparing with on Polish, like Ascension has really tight movement once you figure out that double jump. And even I can't fault them for that, because once I figured it out, I was like, oh, actually, this is awesome. Like, I love this double jump. So yeah, it doesn't hold up on that ground. So I think we probably tossed out the top contenders for this. So now, if we were going to get serious about who we want to win, who are we arguing for?
I would say my top 3 are Ascension, Cultivar, and it's so tough to choose. Because I really, really did love Seeds of Revolution, but I've got to go with Shroom 64.
My top 3 would be Ascension, Shroom 64, and Seeds of Revolution.
I need to quickly remind myself of Ascension because I think
Ascension
I played
was
it.
that spooky game by Team Vulture Party.
Yeah, that's kind of a NES, like really old school,
Yeah,
three
those
colors.
beautiful
Yeah.
dark
Hairy
blues
hands.
and blacks.
My kind of only
Uh,
gripe to it is that it kind of gets repetitive really quickly, I guess, because, and I mean, this is a game jam. There's, I'm not expecting like a, 20-hour gameplay here, but it's just that like once you finish one of the stages, essentially, like it's like, oh, okay, I get it now, and then like the next stages are very similar. Which is the reason why it's not ranked so high in my personal list. That being said, like as far as like a platform and all that, it's obviously excellent, and the polish is kind of crazy on it.
I felt like on Game Jam Scope it was good, because I went back to play Cultivar again, and that's also really well polished, but also if you've played through like once or twice, you've kind of seen everything it has to offer, which is true. Like, you had 2 weeks to make it, so it's like, Game Jam Scope. But
no, for sure, and Cultivar, like hits my kind of preference as far as I'm not a very good platformer player, to be
suck
honest,
at platforming too.
So Cultivar hits the scratches my itch more, I guess, but which is why it's ranked higher on my end. But I mean, both those games were great. So
solid. I think I'm going Cultivar, Ascension, and Field of Excellence.
For me, it would probably be in some order. This is not like a top 3, but not in a specific order. Shrooms 64, Wide Awake in the Garden, and Refuse.
Not to diverge, sorry, I just noticed that I had Elements of Gardening as well in my list that I didn't mention earlier. But that was like a pixel energy management for plants, where you'd put a plant in the middle of like a fire field, I guess, and it becomes a...
This is the one where you're in a room and there's like light energy and water energy and like different spots, and you're supposed to plant
the
the
Cheshire
plant.
You get the heat map.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and
That
you've got
was-
like an
that was really
Asura
cool.
god.
That's right.
I tried to play it blind without looking at the spoilers file, and I couldn't get.
Yeah,
After a while,
I
I was
couldn't
only
figure
getting
out-
fire flowers.
I should have looked at
Yeah.
the spoilers file. I couldn't figure out how to like advance. But that was definitely a cool entry. Yes, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say my top 3 for gameplay might be Home Goods Wizard was definitely up there. I enjoyed going through the puzzles on it. Shroom 64 was just a fun trip, and I'm actually gonna say Halftone Helper.
Oh, I loved Halftone Helper.
Yeah, I love that one a lot. I'm definitely
That one
gonna
was
bring it
for me.
up.
That one was really cool, but it to me a little too janky. At least for whatever reason, when I played it, like half the time, the like 2 or 3 objects would auto complete themselves because the physics would just bug out at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
And then
talking about it a lot for theme and art, but I don't know if it would be a top for gameplay for me.
Yeah, I have it at the top of a couple of other categories, but I definitely feel stronger about its art and its theme and its audio than I did about the gameplay itself.
So going in more detail about the arguments I'm going to be making, I thought Shroom 64 was really strong in that it presented you with like a bunch of objects to use, but the actual like buttons you press to use them were the same, because it's your typical almost like first-person shooter rotating inventory thing. And what I enjoyed about it was that the gameplay was kind of tied into its narrative, such as it was, which is, I'm gonna go grow some shrooms in my Tupperware. Meanwhile, you like hear on TV, like, oh, watch out, flies. And you have sort of this evolution of gameplay of first you're just like messing with your household objects, you're sterilizing your jar, and you're cleaning your space, and you're sticking your spores in the Tupperware. And then you wake up the next day and you have to like swat flies. So it's an evolution of that mechanic of, oh, grab the newspaper and hit things. And then there's the further, evolution, the twist of, and now it's a first-person shooter, bringing in, there's that a nail gun that you always had. And I remember I was playing with it on stream, being like, what is this for? And then finally, oh, there it is. And so it's funny because, like, the end, it's basically like a one-gag game, but the end doesn't have anything to do with the beginning, but it felt like coherent because it felt like the natural evolution of this idea of
They Chekhov's gun you with the nail gun.
getting high on shrooms.
They introduce so many Chekhov guns, and each one gets fired.
Yes.
It's the only game where I've ever been. I think I probably lost like a solid 2 minutes trying to figure out how or why I should sterilize my bong. I was sitting there trying to put the bong in the pressure cooker. Like, can I do this? This is ill-advised, but I want to do it anyway.
Yeah, I suppose if you hadn't been drug adjacent before, it'd be totally opaque. But for me, it was so funny.
Why can't I put any flowers in the vase? I don't get it.
Yeah, nice of them to include a vase on the table.
Yeah.
So I can see how, if it didn't directly appeal to that niche, how it wouldn't seem so coherent. But I think it appealed to me so much just because the gameplay was so tied up in the little story it was telling.
I want to point out though that
that's pretty convincing to me. I think
Yeah.
it was also definitely
For
a
me-
fun watch when we went through it on stream.
Yeah. For me, when it comes to Shrooms 64, I would like to point out though that it did what it wanted to do very well, and it was polished in the sense that it was easy to figure out what you were doing. But at the same time, for most of the game, all you did was walk around and click on things in the correct order. So in that sense, I feel that Shroom 64 maybe isn't the best example of kind of
So not so much on the
good
agency
gameplay.
aspect.
Its gameplay is very simplistic and basic in some ways. So I feel that it might make sense to consider kind of rewarding games that try to do something more unusual with their gameplay that manage also to do that to some extent, because I feel that in some ways Shroom 64 was also one of the games with the most simplistic gameplay, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just something that I do want to take into account.
Something that picks your brain a
when we
little
are-
better when you're playing.
I mean, that's not necessarily, I don't disagree entirely, but I guess I kind of disagree that good gameplay means complex gameplay.
Complexity, yeah.
But that's not what I'm trying to say. I just feel that when judging gameplay, I think it makes sense to kind of also consider how interesting the gameplay is. And I feel that Shroom 64 is maybe not interesting because of the gameplay, but rather because of other things. So in that sense, some other entry might have done more with its gameplay than Shroom 64 did.
Well, I guess I don't quite agree with you, but why don't you argue in favor of a different game instead of arguing against this one, and I'll hear you out.
Well, I guess I did some arguing in this sense earlier, in that the tabletop games, Wide Awake in the Garden and Refuse, both in their own ways, in my opinion, they were unusual to begin with because they were tabletop games, so they were kind of like rarities at game jams, I think, at least at Dogbit game jams. But on top of that, I feel that both took the tabletop concept and took it into an interesting direction, where it's not like you are a warrior fighting a monster and now throw some dice, but instead they were very kind of creative takes on collaborative storytelling that also integrated the themes of the jam very well in the gameplay. So, but I know that no one else mentioned these two, or well, Refuse was mentioned, but
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Wide Awake in the
I
Garden
totally
was not
agree
mentioned.
with Refuse. Yeah.
They've
otherwise-
also got good replayability too.
Well,
And that's a very
And I do like the multiplayer aspect too.
I don't think I would support at least Refuse for gameplay, because I feel like, and this is not a knock against it because it was a good time, but it was less of a gameplay experience and more of like an art or conversational experience. I think Wide Awake in the Garden would probably have a stronger claim to involve gameplay. And this is not to knock Refuse, because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. With Wide Awake in the Garden, if I go through that a second time, I assume I'm going to be having a different experience, as is everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to have different objects you're picking in the beginning. You're going to have different roles to determine what you're doing in each room. And that's nice replayability and variety.
But I do say that my complaint about Shroom 64 here is more in terms of kind of like I want to say this because I feel that it's a fair point to make, but I don't mean it as kind of like in my opinion, Shroom 64 should absolutely not get voted for best gameplay because of this.
I mean, if
Yeah.
we're going back
Yeah.
to more traditional gameplay and not point and click or something, I would want to pivot focus back to Ascension, just for being like a super tight platformer with spooky things.
Yeah, I guess like if Ascension implements kind of like its gameplay system, even if the gameplay system is not like something never seen before, if it implements the system in a very solid way so that it's fun to play, even for someone who doesn't usually enjoy platformers too much, that could be kind of a point in its favor for best gameplay.
I
Okay,
mean,
good.
now that we've been talking about it, I'm starting to come around on Wide Awake in the Garden. I feel like I haven't heard much from Approaching Infinity or Casey. Have y'all got any thoughts?
Thinking for my part, so I liked Wide Awake in the Garden. We didn't get all the way through it.
Yeah, we didn't finish it.
When we played it. I mean, that, I don't imagine that it's like the gameplay was going to radically change beyond that. And it did seem like really nice. I think I guess for me, it's like and this is definitely like my own, I don't know, maybe bias, but I'm biased towards computer games, video games, that kind of thing over tabletop games. But obviously, they are perfectly valid entries. So that's definitely like, for me, that's like, yeah, I hadn't considered as much, but it does, like, it really does tick all the boxes. Like, it's got a full, like, it's got a lot of charm in the writing, a lot of like the interesting situations that you have to kind of take add your own kind of spin to, which is always, it's like, that's a good quality for a tabletop game.
I do have a complaint about it in that it seems clear that it hadn't been play tested, which, I mean, I know it's hard to play test a multiplayer tabletop game, because when we were playing it, we were running into a lot of confusion about, like, it says it's a DMless or GMless game. So it's, you have the, GM of the turn who picks a prompt to give to another person, and that was confusing. And there are a few other,
that was an
like,
interesting idea. I think it's definitely, that's a valiant, like, attempt, because, when playing any tabletop games, it's always like, well, one person's going to have to be the GM, and, like, they are playing still, but it's still a different role, and not everyone, sometimes you don't have a group with someone who wants to do that. So it's definitely like a worth trying thing, but it does make some things a little bit harder. I think it's definitely easy for those kind of games to get derailed.
It would definitely benefit from like a rotating player token that you pass around each turn.
I think they might have mentioned something like that, but since we weren't like playing in real life,
we weren't playing it physically.
we did play it fast and loose.
I just went back and skimmed over the rules again, because basically I only read this one while I was stuck in the airport during one of the many instances in which I was stuck in the airport over the last few days. And I was remembering correctly about which game it was, which was good, but also the prompts were just real fucking good. Like, the one of the kind of weaknesses of those types of solo or multiplayer journaling or map crawl type tabletop games is that oftentimes the prompts can feel a little bit designed to make you feel like you're supposed to be narrating a very specific experience that feels a little bit railroaded, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved how some of the prompts were things like in the ruined section, that prompt, something previously benign becomes dangerous to you. How do you engage with the danger? Stuff like that is so cool and open-ended, and I definitely think that is a plus for it in the gameplay category.
That's true.
Open-ended and still sets the tone.
One thing I appreciated about this one, and I guess a bit of a point against, there was one game that talked about, like, we were playing with Imakuni that night. It was you like think of a plant or a thing in your home that used to be a plant and its journey to like becoming.
Once we were trees.
Yeah, that one. Okay, Once We Were Trees, and that was an interesting exercise, and I had a good time. But I kind of didn't like how it. I mean, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but I didn't enjoy how its whole bent kind of was towards making you feel ashamed or guilty about using things that are made out of plants. And I noticed there was like a lot of emotionally charged language there. And that's somebody's prerogative. If you make a fictional work, you have a right to insert a theme. But just for my own enjoyment, I was kind of like, okay, I know that I need to like respect my belongings and stuff. But so one thing I liked about Wide Awake in the Garden is that I was expecting it to steer me towards like a certain like moral point, but it kind of deftly avoids like doing that in a specific way. So yeah,
it keeps it nice and ethereal.
Yeah, because I think there's definitely like a theme there as well, an intention, but it's not quite as heavy-handed.
Yeah, and I really liked how everything that you explore within the prompts that happen inside the garden does kind of lead to a big kind of culmination moment, that kind of that big the ultimate prompt at the end where it just says, do you leave the garden and how? And I love how the group has to narrate their answer together. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, it's just I've come around. I'm ready to agree with Hempoli and support that for best gameplay. What do we think?
I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely unique for a game jam. It's also always interesting to see.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do it. Congratulations to winner of best gameplay, Wide Awake in the Garden. So
Ow, ow.
Well done. Hell yeah. The next category we're going to judge is best audio. And there was a lot of games. Usually in a game jam, like audio gets kind of neglected because it's like, the least essential thing. But there's so many games in this jam that had really strong audio.
Yeah, I was astounded at how good the audio in like easily half the games in my initial block were. I was just sitting there listening to the menu music on a couple of them, just sort of bopping along.
I've got a bunch of nominees. Any of y'all want to like shout things first before I start blabbing?
Horticultist.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was my number one.
Voice
too,
acting, music, and the oh yeah, I love
Plus the town square background music.
Yes!
After like the first couple days starts getting darker as the tree grows.
Yeah, it was really, there was a lot of love.
That's
I remember,
good sound design.
Yeah.
For two examples that maybe didn't have the most interesting sound design, but just had very good atmospheric audio, Telling Us Bees and The Home of Playa both had kind of very fitting soundscapes for the games.
Telling Us Bees definitely deserves a nomination for effective use of that music, but I was going to bring up The Home of Playa as an actual contender for this category.
Yeah, same. It's actually on my list too.
It has a lot of music. It's got sound effects, like for all these individual little interactions, which is a lot of like care and detail, and also the little boop 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 for the dialogue. And I believe one of the devs said that was actually constructed from somebody playing on a woodwind instrument, like literally recording that and dropping that out.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
and it even changes as you get upgrades. I noticed once you get the drifting upgrade, your jump changes sound and all that. So there's a lot of little details in there.
I thought I was hearing things after I got that glide and I was double jumping and I was like, what, does something sound different now? And it was that.
That's it.
I also want to point out the related topic to Horticultist on Ascension. Not only have you got that really excellent background music and you've got great sound effects, it's all very responsive and feels good, but I paid attention as I went back to play it just to specifically listen to audio. There's this really creepy hum in the background that kind of like has different intensity. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting touch. And it's sort of, you don't notice it unless you're like specifically just trying to hear audio, but it's like, okay, so there's some detail here.
Yeah, I actually noticed that as well because it funny enough, it reminds me of a little trick that our audio engineer on Mini Motorways Disaster Piece uses. When you're building a road and you like basically when you're building a road in Mini Motorways, you can steamroll a tree and it will just like explode into little polygons and go away forever. And when that happens, there's this little dissonant hum that gets kind of overlaid in the background of the music, and it gets a little janky for just a second. and I picked that up in Ascension, and I was just like, I was thrilled by that because it's one of my favorite little tricks to just be like, oh, you done fucked up, player, you know.
Oh yeah, I've used Shepherd's Tone sparingly in my games for a bit of extra dread. Although what's funny is I put one in a very specific part of the Charioteer that had a very complex camera movement. And the thing is, if I listen to a Shepherd's Tone for more than a few seconds, it physically makes me ill. So I was like trying to time this camera movement with the audio and the music and listening to this Shepherd's Tone over and over and getting sick as hell. But if you play that game, it looks and sounds really cool, and the Shepherd's Stone's only there for a few seconds if you actually play it as intended. So, you know.
Sometimes we gotta suffer for our art.
Oh my god, have we found the brown note?
I wanted to mention, speaking of weird, shitty things, in the sense of, I believe one of the first things you do in this game is clean all the shit out, is Shroom 64. All the inventory items have their own little sound effects, and everything in this game has been done to like make it all retro. So it's got that like crunchy Nintendo 64 sound on all these sound effects. You got your retro audio, your beeps and boops, and you got music. So there's a lot of like detail put into the audio for that.
Yeah, it's a really good
after Ascension. More or less, just to reiterate that, I know, like basically same notes as has been already mentioned.
Yeah, but both Ascension and Shroom 64 called out to me because I love trying to make audio match. If you're trying to make an homage to like a classic console or something, trying to match that feel as much as possible, and those two nailed it.
Absolutely.
Rolling West was also pretty nice. I thought, like, you know, music. Had all the audio for all the different like prompts that you get.
Yeah, Rolling West had a surprisingly robust sound effects library. I know this is not the category for it, but I am just gonna say here, I really wish I could have played more of Rolling West, but that font choice like was absolutely doing my head in. I struggled so much. I feel like such an asshole saying that, but it was so hard.
I mean, there's a running joke that I get mad at people about their font in this jam, so, you know, you're not the only one chiding people over their font choices.
Yeah, I have to second Rolling West as well. I think they did a really good job setting you in the Old West, I guess.
I want to give an honorable mention to Claudivation for the music and having VO, which is rare in a jam game, and the claw sound effects. So that was fun.
Claudivation was great. That was just an A+ sensory experience all around, man.
Just landing a bunch of items at the same time and hearing the ching and going, I hit jackpot.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're lucky that System Logoff is using their powers for good, not evil, because that could totally be some sort of evil mobile game and make a lot of money.
Monetized mobile game thing,
God, yeah.
Just like stepping right on the
I'll shout out Halftone Helper as well. That one had really soothing audio. It was very simple, but it was very well done, and it never got annoying or repetitive.
It felt like a great
like water sound. That was really nice.
Yeah, I thought it was really accessible. It's the kind of thing that if I had children, I would have had them play it because it's like a great vibe for them, right?
I'm gonna give my kids Halftone Helper when they misbehave and Claudivation when they're good.
Wire them up with Claudivation.
So who would be really serious about arguing in favor of winning Best Audio?
I think I'd put Horticultist.
I think so too.
I just like the or whatever, like the dark, like I was this is great.
Yeah,
like
there's
nailed
multiple lines voice acted too.
Yeah.
He had a few phrases.
The slow creepy dissonance of the music was very on point.
The speech of the villagers.
Yeah. There was so many things that just rang, perfectly for that game.
I've got a soft spot for Ascension, but I could accept Horticultist.
Yeah, I was leaning Ascension, but it's hard to make the argument against Horticultist, and I also enjoyed Horticultist. And my main beef with that game is not audio related; it's the font. Did you have to use the default font? Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, this is not the best of font category.
Yeah, I feel like Horticultist and Ascension are probably the strongest entries. Their audio.
Yeah, Ascension's right next to it to me as well.
Yeah, is there a lot of detail in Ascension? I'm willing to give it to Horticultist for the evolution of the sound.
Yeah,
going
they're
forward with the music and also incorporating the voice acting effectively, where it's like not every line was voice acted, but there are enough clips to like really sell that character.
there's a lot of dynamics, a lot of variety. Each of the 3 different types of rooms that you help clean up have their own different background musics. There's a lot there.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear, it's not like I'm holding it against any game for not having VO. I think what makes it stand out is not specifically having VO, but the effective use of it. There's not a lot, but what is there is used really effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good about. Were we going with Horticultist for best audio?
I think so, yeah.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I think I was the one that like spewed it out as like the very first suggestion. So yeah, I would be stunningly hypocritical to back down now.
All right. Well, congratulations to the winner of best audio, Horticultist. Very nicely done.
Hooray!
Woo! All right.
Welcome our overlord, Tomato Tap.
Tomato
Hell
tap.
yeah. Hell yeah. All right. The next category we're going to look at is best art. And this one's going to be really hard because
There's so many good looking games.
Yeah, we had some incredible entries. Honestly, there are easily like 2 or 3 just in like the chunk that I judged first. The very, very first one that I've got to give a nod out to is definitely Home of Playa. That one is just the art is just stunning. The bloom, the little animated snails and mushroom guys, the charming pixel portraits, like everything about it is just very as this nice unified style, stunning color palette, just so many nice little touches and little animations.
Day-night cycle and
The house,
Yeah, the house was really cool. Following you around.
Felt
All
like
the
a
little
Baba
clouds and
Yaga kind
stuff.
of thing.
Yeah.
and
For me, Telling Us Bees had especially
that's some great
strong art. They were all still images, but it has some really cool small touches, and it was just very pleasant to look at.
The very effective framing of the gardener.
yeah, it was good that we had,
never showing her eyes and such. It was
Yeah,
Dylan,
that
his
was a
day
really
job-
nice touch.
We had Dylan as a guest on stream, and his day job is being a film director. So it was great to have the official film director's blessing of this is good cinematography. Because
yeah, I feel also that Shroom 64 definitely
yes.
had like it nailed the kind of offbeat, funky
As a graphics programmer,
style.
I was all over that because I don't know if lay people are aware, but that look does not happen by accident.
No, it's very intentional.
Yeah, they had to work hard to make it like totally nail that aesthetic. And so everything like the textures, the shaders, both in-world and post-effects, and the models, except for like the ones at the end, but that was permitted because we were in the trip. I think somebody pointed out like, these fly enemies have more polys than everything else in the game combined. It was just really well executed.
The textures, they got the blurred look of N64 textures going on.
They their maps. Yeah.
Yeah, it just like it's a 10 out of 10 for what it's trying to do. Like it had a very clear art brief and just like nailed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, honestly, you couldn't tell that it wasn't made in the 64 era, like the early 64 era, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well done.
Rolling West also, I feel, had very efficient but also very effective art direction.
Oh, all the little everything
there's a lot
looking
of-
like little cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it had that paper doll quality. That was it lent it like this real kind of like a tactile quality, which is something I really love when a video game manages to evoke that.
Also, I kind of enjoyed how like everybody in that game is like a lizard or a robot, and they don't explain shit, and that was wonderful. Like effective world building by
Yeah, the
not
mining
world building
robots.
at all. It's just you just accept it. I believe the player character is a lizard. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Overpowered mining robots.
I believe
That
so.
was I think the robots was the thing that surprised me the most. When I was like, oh shit, robots.
So I actually had to go back and look at it, and I realized that all the scenery, the cliffs out in the distance, are also like, paper cutouts.
Aside from the damn font, that was a really unified aesthetic.
God, yeah.
Like you guys,
What? Why?
It's so quick
Just
and
the one-
easy
the one
to
ding.
swap out a font. And yet every game jam, I'm always yelling at people about this.
If you had used Comic Sans, we would have avoided this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, people have jumped at me
Papyrus would have
before,
really
like,
fit the aesthetic.
what, Shibanya, you'd rather them use Comic Sans? And it's like, yes, I would. I like that better than Liberation Sans now.
Comic
At least
Sans,
it's a choice.
looks good if you do the all caps thing where you have like the all caps, but the non-first letter of a
I wish
word
to be
is
liberated
smaller.
from Liberation
Small caps.
Sans. I want to mention Ascension because speaking of nailing the look and the era, this did that, and
Yeah, I really like the revealing effect of the fire of the light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great choice of those little flashes and splashes of red too. It's just really it's really good at I was stunned at how much dread it managed to evoke considering
Yes.
what it is.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, speaking of just throwing you in some weird world and not explaining shit, this game also does that, and yeah, I feel like there's something really gripping about it, and the fact that nothing is explained. And I think there are a lot of games that like randomly threw household objects in to like match the theme, and you could say that they did, but I feel like it somehow like just totally works. And one of the devs said in the chat that they picked these objects because they were things they were scared of as a child. And
I was gonna say that I thought they fit the theme brilliantly because of that. Like I remember.
dread.
Hey, yeah, that's it. It's just like the weird shadows in the dark, right? And you're like, is that a person? No, it's a coat hanger, right?
Yeah, and the
I love
selective
that.
reveals.
There's
Yeah.
3 levels of brightness, and all the sprites have a different look in each of those different
Yeah.
brightnesses.
Yeah.
Like there's one that's kind of just on the edge in between full bright and full dark,
Mhm.
but you can just kind of see it if you position yourself right.
And it works so well in the fact that, like, the thing that you can't see is usually like scarier than the thing that you can because
Yeah.
you imagine it, and it like so clearly like plays on those primal fears. So it's like bringing you back into Eco's childhood to be scared of the things that Eco is scared of.
Yeah. To bring up 2 more games for this, there's of course Halftone Helper that I think someone else will also want to discuss. But before going to that, I also want to quickly bring up Growing Tree as having some of the most funny visual jokes in the jam with the flowers that hold like a
Machine guns and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I certainly had a
I
lot
like
of fun.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like otherwise the graphics are very simplistic, but that single graphical detail was excellent.
Yeah.
I want to call out, at least as an honorable mention, the Housewife's Guide to Toxic Tinctures.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good art.
Pretty good
overall,
job of-
and really nice backgrounds.
I loved the
Yeah.
palette in that one.
Yeah.
The palette in
Had a
that one
very
and Telling
effective-
Us Bees brought me a lot of joy to look at.
Yeah, it had a very clear idea of what it wanted to be and achieved that. I also wanted to mention Plantarium, because I remember on the stream we were like, oh, it might have been an asset pack because it looks so polished, but the developer writes on their page that they made all the art themselves. Yeah, that was very impressive. And what I
Yeah,
liked
the art
about that
was quick.
one was the animation, the squash and stretch was really nice. And like as you pass through the flowers and things, they actually bend. So those were some really nice
Yeah.
touches.
Oh, and the water right
Mhm.
below.
Yeah. Really nice texture. Oh, and speaking of nice texture, Halftone Helper again.
Yes.
I know I keep bringing that one up,
Oh, that's a
but
good one.
man, just what a gorgeous little game.
Mhm.
And I feel like it should get extra points in the art category simply because I have never seen a game in that art style before.
Same.
Like it is super unique out of like all of the commercial games I have ever played, all of the like awards shows and like stuff that I have juried over the years. I have never played anything that looks remotely like that.
You know what I really loved about that art is that the art itself was tied in with the action you, the player, do. Because with
Yeah.
those like coloring books with the pigment on them when you're a kid, you drop water on them, and the game is you drop water on them. So that was such a great like tie-in of everything. It was a very coherent game, very cohesive. I also want to throw a shout out to Cloudivation. System Loggoth always nails the UI, and this game was no exception. And you know, the sprunginess of the stuff, like hitting those dopamine centers. But I really wanted to call attention to the animation of the claw, because even though it was a 2D pixel sprite, it felt heavy. It's a great animation.
Yeah, it had a lot of weight to it, right? And I played that game, so I was just like scooping up things, and I was just like, I am not using the claw. I'm using it as a shovel, right? And it was so fun. I got to like over 1,000.
So much more fun to have all the stuff like going in all at once, and playing the sound really fast. And it was just like, and it's just like, and then they jam. Right, and you just like push them down with shoving the claw down there to get to clear the jam.
Eat it.
Cultivation was definitely a lot of fun to look at. Same goes for Stress from the same kind of a
it's very unified. It was a pixel
stream
art.
block.
That one took me a bit to figure out. I didn't realize at first that I could. I don't know how. I read through the tutorial and then immediately forgot that I could throw things. I could throw the axes, and so at first I was like, the baseball thing, this is bullshit. How do I dodge this? And then realized that I could be throwing things at it. Like, oh crap, okay, this is awesome now.
I appreciated
it.
I
really engaged in the loop. I mean, speaking of gameplay, I guess.
Sarcastically staring at the screen when it came to its shoehorned in household goods. Thank you. I appreciated that.
I do also want to shout out Elements of Gardening, which has absolutely beautiful pixel art.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I really love the splash screen for that one.
There's so many good ones. If I was gonna get serious about nominating some, I think my top 3 would be Ascension, Home of Playa, and Shroom 64. But it's a tough group.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, this is a toughie. I think I would go for Ascension, Home of Playa, and I'm actually gonna put one up there for Halftone Helper. It is so unique that I feel like that uniqueness and how well it was executed are deserving for a nod for number 1 from yours truly.
I think for me, top 3 would probably be Halftone Helper, Cultivation, and probably Telling Us Bees.
And like they're so good. Like all of these I completely agree with, right? Like the Telling Us Bees I thought was like, this is picture book quality.
Yeah,
like
so
I'm professional. Like I've seen books with worse art, right, that are sold and I'd still buy. Like it's just so and someone mentioned the editing of like where it cut off and all that, and it was great. So I think I'd say Telling Us Bees, Ascension too. Like when you finish a stage, like that animation of the like crow or whatever that is, right? And I thought was wonderful. I mean, I can't, boiling it down to 3 is so hard, but I think I'd go with Home of Playa just because like the whole package was quite lovely.
I'm gonna go Ascension, Halftone Helper, and Telling Us Bees. I think I'm leaning towards Ascension.
Yeah, I noticed we're all saying
biased towards the NES stuff for sure.
We're all mentioning NES Ascension. I can see the argument for. I'm coming around on Halftone Helper as well.
I've got Halftone Helper in my top 3 and Ascension, so that also doesn't help our decision. But my third one would be Claudivation, because I just love the look of all the items that are in the game.
I feel like I lean Ascension to win with my runner-up. Like, we're not picking runners-up, but if for some reason Ascension won Game of Jam, my runner-up would be Halftone Helper, yeah.
That is exactly what I was going to say for that exact reason.
How do we feel about Ascension winning Best Art?
I'm fine with it.
I'm good with it.
Yep.
That works for me.
Awesome. All right. Congratulations, Ascension. Best Art.
Well done, Vulture Party.
Congrats.
Yeah,
oh, look, there's the link. Go check it out.
Yeah, go check out the link. It's in chat right at this exact moment.
That's right. We're on top of this stuff. Awesome. So the next category is Best Use of theme. So there was a main theme, which is cultivation, and there was like a sub-theme, household goods. But I figure we can kind of judge these together as the same kind of theme because they're so related. So I know this can be kind of a tricky category, like what does it mean best use of theme? But sort of what was like a game where the theme was so essential to it that it wouldn't really be like itself without that theme.
Obviously, what this means is which game had the theme mentioned the most times during gameplay.
Not
This
necessarily.
game was just a single screen having the text written over and over again.
It could also mean like
obviously
the
wins.
most clever interpretation of the theme. You know, it doesn't have to be any kind of hard and fast metric, but that's sort of like what we're going for.
One that jumps out immediately to me is a Housewife's Guide to Toxic Tinctures.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the first one that
it was
jumps to mind for
definitely
me
an unusual take on the theme.
is hilarious too. Horticultist.
For
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Just like ticking every
Horticultist
box.
is dripping with theme. It was.
For me, I would like to bring up Refuse as like a very clever take on the theme.
True. Yeah.
I'd bring up Telling Us Bees actually again.
Oh yeah,
for-
that's
for this
also
one.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I think
I love
telling,
the point
telling
of
us
view,
bees.
too. Oh, dude, I was just gonna say it's like I've never played a bee before. But
Oh, you weren't just
This is
a bee.
great.
You were bees. You were multiple bees.
yeah, that's true. I'm the hive. Yeah.
Long time caller, first time bees.
I did really enjoy that as a narrative device. I felt so invested. And I usually, I
Yeah.
enjoy visual novels, but I often bounce off of them pretty quickly because I have a really short attention span. But I was like rapt. It grabbed me.
Same here.
I want to mention Shroom 64 for theme because you cultivate
Very integrated with the gameplay.
your shrooms.
Yeah, it is.
That is the game right there.
And you use household objects.
Exactly. And it's not even shoehorned in because that's how you do shrooms. That's how it works. You make your shrooms and then you fight the flies with AK-47s. That's exactly how it works in real life.
That's absolutely.
I did
An
shrooms at a Christmas
AK-47.
party once. It was just like that.
Mm-hmm.
An AK-47 is a household object.
Were the flies wearing Santa hats? As you were
Christmas
going?
jumpers, actually.
Nice.
I would also like to shout out Refuse again. I thought
Yes.
the thematic themery of that one was quite on point, as well as Halftone Helper, which I'm just going to keep bringing up over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Apparently,
What was really great about Halftone Helper was that the cultivation, the growing of the things, was directly tied into meeting your goal. It was the gameplay, so it was nice.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Cultivar also was pretty strong there, since that is. I mean, maybe not the household objects made the slightly weaker appearance, although they were there, but they were there as like the obstacles sometimes. But the game itself was like just all
And we'd be
literally
remiss not
cultivation.
to mention Wide Awake in the Garden.
right.
Although I would say the household objects were very tenuous.
I suppose you
I'm-
could introduce them yourself in the
Yeah.
when you were prompting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say with Wide Awake in the Garden, it definitely makes use of household objects, not just that you're using them to select your adjectives, your descriptors, but there's household objects in a gardening area.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel it hit cultivation as much. You're taking a trip through a greenhouse and underneath it, but not much in the long term of cultivating something.
That's true. And
That's
that's
fair
a very
point.
good point.
except in like the metaphorical, like cultivating your understanding, which like anybody could claim to do. But
Cultivating your imagination.
yeah.
Yeah, in
This
some ways,
whole game was about cultivating a metaphor.
I think
some ways-
I'm gonna throw down for Horticultist just because it's a game about cult evading.
That is true.
Eh.
It
You
works on multiple levels.
Winner,
you
best
cultivate
band of
your
jam.
cultists.
I do
And
want
all the way
to
to
quickly
the-
mention in favor of Wide Awake in the Garden. I'm not sure if it would be my top pick for this, but just kind of like as a counter argument to what was just said, I feel that the game has the kind of like recording your memories and or recording the events and using those events to aid you in the future as kind of like a more concrete example of cultivation instead of just like a completely abstract, maybe the friends we made along the way were the actual cultivation kind of thing.
That is a very good point. That a huge part of that was you need to record it to use for later. Although I think, you weren't required to do that. You had to record every time, and then it was a requirement.
Yeah,
before the
there's only a
end.
single time where you had
Yeah.
to use it.
But
use
it's
the
true
recording.
that
So
there was that continuity there.
yeah, like I just I don't think I feel that the point that Wide Awake in the Garden didn't do maybe as much with the theme as some other games is fairly made, but I just wanted to bring that up just as a kind of like a small aside of the game did do that though.
I didn't expect to when we went into this, but I'm kind of swinging towards telling us bees on this in the sense of, we were just talking about like the friends we made along the way, but as far as like that kind of cultivation goes, it like really strongly pulled off the idea of the cultivation of the relationship, not just between, the woman and their lover, but also like the player and the woman and the player in the garden in this very literary, abstract way. But it was like, that was some of the strongest writing I've seen in a game jam. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made you
And cultivation
sad.
does play into it very heavily.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you didn't cultivate that rose bush, who knows what would have happened?
Well, when I played, I let the rosebush die intentionally because I felt that was the more satisfying way for the story to go. And I actually haven't played the game to see what happens if I don't let the rosebush to die. So
What happens if you let the
guess-
rose
What
bush
happens
die?
when it dies?
I haven't seen that ending.
I think the ending slightly implies that to be kind of the sad end. The protagonist blames herself for maybe I should have cared more. Maybe I should have done more. Maybe it was my fault. Which is I was kind of hoping that it would lead into kind of like the rose bush died. Maybe this is a signal for me that I should move on from this past relationship. But yeah, the game took a slightly different. But my top pick for theming would probably still be Refused, mostly just because I feel that it took both the cultivation theme and the household object theme and combined those in a very satisfying way. I feel that Telling Us Bees did a very good job with the theming and with storytelling, but didn't quite do as much with the household object theming as Refuse, in my eyes.
I had the same thought, and I was thinking, well, if you have like a beehive in your backyard, I guess maybe that could be considered a household object, but most of it does take place outside, in a garden itself.
I don't know. I feel like that's not a point to hold against it just because it
Oh, yeah.
does take place in a home. Due to the nature of it. I think like how much I would deduct or add on like how much do you literally use this definitely depends on the implementation as well.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't ding it as much.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
of course like if Telling Us Bees had like now she's holding a telephone.
I do
apparently
appreciate
it's
they didn't
a household
shoehorn
object.
something.
Yeah, it's like obviously that would have like Telling Us Bees did excellent work with what it had, and there was no need
know,
to add household
there-
objects.
There is a
I
game
just-
that
for-
has a woman holding a telephone, and that is A Housewife's Guide to Toxic Tinctures. That has all your women holding the telephone action right there.
Yeah, I just personally find the Refuse's way of taking the household object thing and applying cultivation very directly to that kind of a fun in a way. Not many of the other entries are.
Yeah, I think I'd add my voice to Refuse. It's funny, both those two come out as my top two picks as well. Horticultist I felt was less on the household items were a little shoehorned in the weird way to convert cultists, I guess. But Refuse, when I was reading the Refuse kind of introduction there, I thought it was like a disgruntled housewife that was like discarded or something at first because it's just like, oh, my family doesn't care for me now that I've fed them and cleaned their and their clothes and whatever, and I was just like, where's this going? This is so dark. And then it's like, oh, the strap fell off and I fell in a ditch, and I'm like, what is going on? And then it's just. And then I get that it's a household item, and I'm, oh my god, that's brilliant. And so that had a really big impact on me, and I was odd, and I was like, how are they gonna do the cultivation for this? And then it just like everything just fit perfectly together, and I found it was such a beautiful imagery of the like nature retaking kind of discarded household items. So
That's
so
true.
my vote would go there, but
They are so like super
Yeah.
fundamentally
Although-
tied to that.
yeah.
Yeah. Although for Horticultist, I feel that I would disagree with the point that the household objects theming was kind of shoehorned in, because I feel that Horticultist took a very interesting approach of kind of basically taking Feng Shui and making a game around kind of fantasy Feng Shui.
I thought there was more elements of gardening
Which
though.
very directly relates to household items. So in that sense, I feel that it was a very creative take on both themes.
I wasn't getting a feng shui feel from Horticultist at all. Are you sure you're not talking about the elements of gardening?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Elements of gardening.
Yeah, I was wondering, it's like, because the gameplay, I ended up almost just being like, is it the happy face or is it I forget the other action, but there was
Yeah.
2 actions that you used to
Tomato
convert
face.
them, and
Oh, angry.
I patted
Yeah.
you on the journal. Please respond.
That one.
But yeah, sorry,
didn't
I was
really
just really
understand
meaning
in
elements of
Horticultist.
gardening.
You know, I could tell when I was succeeding, but I couldn't tell why. Like I
Yeah.
found it very hard to guess like what the correct action to take on each particular character was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like
Mhm.
you had to
Seemed
try
kinda
one of
random.
the 2 convert options and quickly click to see if you got the happy face or angry face.
yeah, and if you held if it was the correct one, you'd kind of get a bunch of conversion points if you held it for a little while. But so that was a little abstract to me, where I was like, oh, like it felt like this could have been a dialogue option. It didn't feel like I like the idea and the attempt to tie it into people's living space and all that, but I felt it was a little weaker than some of the other contenders in this category.
Yeah, it's a fun game, but I feel like it needed like more time in the oven to like develop those ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. It's kind of funny that we went to discuss Horticultist only because I accidentally mentioned its name instead of the game it was actually meaning to mention.
Oh, I had it in my list though. Like I
Okay, okay, good.
It was
yeah,
in my
the
list, too.
theme of it is amazing, but it just I felt it was a little weaker than the others.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tomato
But
pepper.
how did you feel about elements of
Gardening.
gardening? Yeah, in terms of theming, because I like the Feng Shui aspect of it.
I feel bad, but I like totally bounced off that game. I like couldn't.
It was
figure
kind of
out-
hard to approach for sure.
It made me feel very stupid, but that didn't necessarily mean it wasn't on theme.
And I feel bad because Cheshire Cat usually makes a really strong entry. This is a strong entry, but I like it. I'm too stupid for it.
Oh, your game turned us into bimbos. You were cultivating bimbosity.
Damn, that's smart. That's clever. I didn't even have refuse in my list, but Colin's impassioned description of it kind of changed my mind, and I feel like I am leaning towards that now.
I do want to give a shout out to Seeds of Revolution.
Yeah, Seeds of Revolution was quite clever with the theming. It was like a game. It felt to me like an imagined conflict between like all this shit that's sitting around in the bottom of your shed. Like just very, very cool in that way.
Yeah, you're getting attacked by a weed killer. It makes sense. That's what happens when I go to the shed.
I would just come back 2 seconds to the element of gardening, just to shout out that in my case it's kind of my type of game, I guess. I was like, oh, we gotta combine elements and all that, and I love the seeds would inherit what the parent plants were and all that, but I felt it was very complex for what it was.
I feel bad because
And
that's
so
usually the kind of game I love and sink a lot of time into.
Yeah.
But I had such a hard time like getting a foothold because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times in a game where, especially in a crafting game, you do need to like drag baby across the finish line for their first thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably what this game needed, was to
I
like
think
show
you
you at
used
least
a
one
little bit of
success.
feedback of like this plant is right now gaining a lot of fire energy or a lot of water energy. Yeah, I liked it, but I did end up like after a few minutes I was producing only fire flowers no matter what I did, and I couldn't figure out
Mhm.
why.
Yeah, it was definitely opaque, the gameplay.
And I know it's really
That
tricky
is-
because part of the appeal is like that you don't have it all given to you. So yeah, it's such a hard balance to strike with a game.
That is definitely a game I would like to see expanded on more after,
I agree.
because there's
Mhm.
a very good
Aw.
base there, and if something like like maybe a short tutorial stage showing you what the different elements do, something like that to ramp you up. And maybe more locations with like maybe you're up in the Arctic and any plants near a wall are colder.
Yeah, or even just do the like really super basic JRPG thing of you go to your neighbor and your neighbor gives you a hint about what you ought to be doing. But more to the point, all right, who do we think ought to win best use of theme?
I mean, you know my vote. So Refuse.
Yeah, Refuse has been
Refuse?
on my short list the entire time. For the record, my short list was Refuse, Halftone Helper, and Horticultist. But I think I've been convinced about Horticultist having the household objects elements shoehorned in a little bit more than a couple of the other entries. Oh gosh, the chat about telling us bees was really convincing though. But I think that Refuse is going to have my vote in the end too. I loved that one from like the very first second that we first described it, and even just like read over the prompts on the stream. And I just loved it more the more we actually played it. And it literally would not exist without the thematic elements like we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm ready to throw in with Refuse. Anyone have any last minute objections?
I'll throw in
I
with
refuse.
too. Haha.
Ho, ho, ho.
Oh, yes, let's all refuse. All right, well, congratulations to the winner of Best Use of Theme, Refuse. That was fun. If any of y'all, okay, judges, if you gotta draw. This is, of course, live, so draw in 2 seconds. You gotta draw on your washing machine so we can show it on the stream.
Okay, I'm drawing right now.
Wow, they draw so
Drawing,
fast.
drawing.
We are now on the final category, Game of Jam. And so Game of Jam is the game that just like embodies the jam, is just really good and excels at nearly everything. And I usually say at this point the full package and imply that I'm talking about junk or something. Maybe I am.
Household junk.
The Game of Jam. It doesn't have to have been the best at everything, but it's just something like all around the whole thing just comes together really well. So many strong entries in this jam. I'm going to throw out my top 3 of Game of Jam, then we can hear everybody else and argue about them. My top 3 in no particular order would be Shroom 64, Ascension, and the Home of Playa.
Nice.
I think Shroom 64 and Home of Playa for me.
Yeah, I've got a short list of 3 as well. And I'm kind of like waffling about one of them now simply because we talked about it enough during a few of the other categories that it's kind of changed my feelings a little bit. So I am actually down to just Ascension and Shroom 64 as well.
My top 3 would probably be Shroom 64, Telling Us Bees, and Refuse.
I think my top 3 would be Shroom 64, Ascension, and Home of Playa.
And my top 3 would be Cultivar, which I quite liked, and Horticultist and Ascension.
Yeah, Horticultist was the one that was originally on my top 3 list, but after we discussed it enough in some of the other categories, I was convinced that Ascension and Shroom 64 are kind of in a category above, I think.
Yeah, Horticultist would be my 4th favorite because it excelled in a lot of things, but I too am like torn between Shroom 64 and Ascension for who I personally would pick as my Game of Jam.
For the record, the reason why I backpedaled a little bit on Horticultist is because the sections where you are in the cultists' personal dwellings were a little bit obscure and difficult to figure out, and not quite as polished and interesting and kind of interest keeping as the rest of it. But the rest of it was real fucking good.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
sort of
loved it.
gameplay wise, it breaks down a little bit because it starts to feel a little bit unfair. You're just like, okay,
Yeah.
why did they not like this action this time? Like it doesn't.
My criticism of it would be sort of a mirror of a praise I've given to others for the coherentness of their storytelling and gameplay. Of Horticultist doesn't seem to be supporting any kind of like idea in how you recruit your cult members. And I'm not saying like every game has to like be didactic or something, but there doesn't seem to be a relationship between the means by which you recruit the cultists and like what you're doing outside, like scolding them or praising them, or what you're doing growing this plant. So it's like all these parts that don't seem to have anything to do with each other.
So with Horticultus, I actually played it a second time to check out an alternate ending because it's got multiple endings. And one of those was I only helped out because you get 3 other options to correctly clean things up without replacing it with cultist objects. And you do
just skip recruiting them at all.
Yeah, I didn't get any recruits at all, and let me tell you, you get scolded for that pretty badly. So I did like that there was actually an alternate path you could take that's openly defying Tomato Tep.
Nice.
That's really cool.
I was
didn't
all
know
in on
that.
I love that.
I
Yeah.
didn't even consider doing that.
Oh, that's a really nice detail.
You were eating those tomatoes. You were, yeah.
That is cool. And I
We're
think it's a
drinking
really
that
strong game,
V8
and I enjoy
Kool-Aid.
it.
Yeah.
I just
Drinking
still
the
don't
V8.
feel like I don't feel like it hits the highs that Shroom 64, no pun intended, in Ascension do.
Yeah, Horticultus, if you go for the, let's call it the true ending, where you get all the cultists, you hit all the goals all the way through, it does feel like it starts to drag towards the end of the game, because by then you're already quickly going through all the recruits, clicking on everything as fast as you can to get to the next day.
Yeah.
You're going through a rote process.
I'd say Ascension, and I guess we're being really critical here because, like, I don't want anybody listening to this feel like the games were bad or anything. Like, we're just like at the cream of the crop,
Yeah.
right? Like
Like if your
so
game's being mentioned right now, it means you did a good job.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely,
This is like nitpick central.
Oh yeah.
absolutely. And I'd say that, like, for me, Ascension, the one thing is, like, I didn't quite get any cultivation vibes, or maybe I missed that. But like the household items just knocked it out of the park. And obviously the theme and the like 8-bit kind of NES style is spot on. But I felt like the character and all that wasn't tied into any cultivation thing. But that's kind of the only place I'd deduct any points.
Yeah.
Really easy to pick up and play as well. So
One of the reasons why
Yeah.
I'm ready to throw in behind Shroom 64 is that it did hit all of those. Like, you got the items, you got the cultivation.
Shroom 64 would maybe get my vote out of these.
The cultivation was a key part of Shroom 64. Like both the cultivation and the household objects were. So there was a pretty good integration of the theme, and yeah, it was just.
And Shroom 64 also had a very nice sense of humor, which didn't it didn't try to make explicit jokes as much as just having like a goofy bunch of things going on, like the flies being these giant flies just buzzing everywhere that you slap a couple of times, and in general just kind of like, yeah, your mushrooms are gathering flies, sweat them, as kind of a
I
fun
definitely
little.
enjoyed it as like the game equivalent of a short story.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was like
that makes
a tasty little horror novella about shit growing out of your walls. And it actually interestingly enough, I think it works very well as a metaphor for obsessive compulsive disorder as well. The sort of aspect of OCD where you feel compelled to perform rituals for things to happen over and over and over again, and also the cleanliness aspect,
The cleanliness
repeated
aspect.
themes of like cleaning things off the walls and sterilization, and being worried about roaches and flies, and then eventually like freaking out about them so much that you need to physically kill them. Like it felt like there was some really really strong metaphorical content there that felt intentional to me, just because it was tied together enough that I would have been surprised if it was totes randos.
No, it was very cohesive in that axis as well. And I also, we talked about Ascension building up dread. I felt like Shroom 64 also did a good job of building up anticipation and dread.
yeah, there's those
Yeah.
like 3 shapes in the distance there, like outside the house, right? Like that I didn't know what that was, and I was just like, and I tried shooting it with the like nail gun or whatever you've got, and it's just like, what's going on, and the buzzing and all that. Like I don't actually super like Shroom 64 because I'm not a shooter player and all that. But I have to agree with most of, or I guess every one of your arguments there. Like it was very cohesive, felt on theme. There's also a lot of nods to like old school games, and they perfectly executed the art style, and there's a lot to say about it. So
It's also just like an absolute ripper of a project to have been put together in this time frame.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like
that was
how
quite impressive.
It works as like a one joke game, but it also just works as a game.
Yeah. Oh, Shivani, you brought this up on stream, and I thought about it more, and I 100% agree. This is definitely a drug game made by somebody that knows drugs.
Yes, thank you.
If you see a drug game made by somebody that doesn't know drugs,
Hmm.
it'll be very in your face about it. It's like, hey, you wanna boost some tunes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and also like the
this
focus
has
on
more of a
psychedelic
mundanity
imagery is
to
like,
it, especially at the
But this
beginning.
is very much, you know, it goes through the process of actually growing mushrooms. It's
Go on.
surprisingly detailed.
I looked at it like as a gardener. I haven't done shrooms, but I was just like, this is a very accurate way to make mushrooms grow because you need to like it was just like
I
spot
have
on. I
grown
was like, good job.
mushrooms
Yeah,
for food purposes, just
Yeah.
like regular old food mushrooms, and this is exactly how you do it.
exactly.
I think the Shroom 64 did a really good job of showcasing the process of cultivating mushrooms, but I think they botched it a little bit at the end by not including the part where you inject the mushroom drugs into your eyeballs, because that's what you do,
Oh,
right?
right,
Like that's
Yes.
That's how that works.
the important
Yeah. You
endpoint.
put the tourniquet around your eyeball and
Uh-huh.
squeeze really hard, and then you inject.
yeah,
Exactly.
and that's how you get
That-
the like pink elephants.
Yeah.
dancing
And then you
with the
sterilize
fairies.
your bong in the pressure cooker, and nothing bad happens.
yep. That's how the kids do it.
Yeah.
What really spoke to me though about it being a drug game was not just the process, like the literal process of making the drugs,
Yeah.
but like if you do psychedelics a lot. The thing about psychedelics that people who haven't tried them miss is that it's not about seeing visuals; it's about the meditations. It's like about thinking really hard about things. That's the actual like strong experience of psychedelics, and like once you've experienced it, you kind of recognize that thought pattern in others, and it's like the jump from the flies, the dread, the shooter is such a like a psychedelic line of thought that you could so totally see tracing is coming from an actual trip, whether it did or not. It's very like psychedelic thought pattern. So it's like, yeah, they know.
I like that it was also kind of I don't know if they thought that far, but I was just like, Shroom 64, it's like, oh, this is going to be like a Mario thing, right? Like, because Mario and mushrooms and all that. And I was like, oh no, they like a literal mushroom take on it. And I thought that was interesting too.
I feel like I keep talking
It might
about
be a bit of a play on Doom 64.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's
Now
true.
that I'm thinking about that.
That literally did not occur to me.
That did not
until
occur to
you
me either.
said-
Yeah.
Now it all
Makes
makes sense, especially the music and the presentation, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we feel about giving Game of Jam to Shroom 64?
I would be okay with that.
Yep, it's good with me.
I would be fine with that.
I would be not only okay with that, I would enthusiastically endorse it. You can tell by the tone of my voice.
I've been convinced.
I guess we'll go ahead and say congratulations to Shroom 64 winning Game of Jam. Incredible work.
Congrats.
It's huge. Such stiff
Quite
competition.
impressive.
Amazing.
Yes. Great work.
This was the 11th Dog Pit Jam. So thank you everybody for continuing to show up at these strange little things. Join us in the winter for Dog Pit Jam 12, name to be announced.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. This has been my first time judging the Dog Pit Jam, and I had a blast. And actually, I do have one more shout out to make. Fuck, I just want to talk one more time about how much I loved Halftone Helper. that game was so much fun.
Oh, it was good.
I think I finally narrowed down why I was like feeling it so hard. And it's because I had such an insane weekend. that like zoning out and tapping into Halftone Helper on my tablet is like the only thing that prevented me from becoming the Joker. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Grats to I believe it was just John Lee who made that one. So yeah. Thanks, John. You prevented me from getting on the no-fly list for the rest of my life.
Shout out to all the participants and all the winners. I think the really incredible like crop of games. Crop, no pun intended. I mean, yeah, it's always great to see. So I'm glad to be able to return and do some more judging. Look forward to future jams, which will be, I'm sure, just as good, if not better.
Mad props to everybody who made a submission for this jam. Like I often say it, making a game is super hard. And so congratulations, whether you won something or not, high fives and pats on the back to everyone. I specifically would like to mention, I was quite impressed by the diversity of games. I was expecting everything to be like a Stardew Valley with, growing like lampshades or something. But the breadth of games was quite impressive. And so great job, everyone.
I just want to say that although the jam has ended, do keep in mind you can still work on your games. If you think you didn't finish up, take some time, work on it a bit more, maybe flesh it out.
If you thought you were free, you were wrong.
You're never free in game dev.
Tomato Tep is coming for you.
But I saw a lot of promising games here that if fleshed out a bit more, maybe some extra levels or heck anything, you could have a full product here that, hey, maybe you pop it up on Steam. Who knows?
I would like to repeat the shout outs to everyone who participated. It was super cool to see people joining the Discord and in general noticing that people are genuinely interested in this game jam, despite it not being like a multi-thousand people jam like some others. Like I'm always just really happy to see people forming communities around game jams without them necessarily having to have like billions of years of history and specific endorsement from, I don't know, from Brad Pitt or something. So it's super nice to see this happening. But also I want to shout out Shibanya for organizing this thing, and also organizing this thing in the middle of being extremely stressed by real life mold and other cultivation related things. So thank you, Shibanya.
Living through
Absolutely.
Shroom 64.
Yeah, exactly.
Goodness gracious. Well, thanks very much. I would like to ask everybody in chat right now to say thank you to your judges, because all of these people have put in a lot of time and effort to play your games and judge your games and be very thoughtful about your games. And I'm always grateful to all of y'all for showing up and donating your time to this funny little jam that's no Ludum Dare, as Pulley pointed out. Y'all rock. Wouldn't have a jam without y'all, so thanks very much.
Yeah, well, everyone's lucky their games didn't suck ass.
That's right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Yeah. So y'all have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
See you, everybody.
See y'all.
Cheers.